What if the population of each country swapped?
So the way we swapped them is we took the most populous countries and the least populous countries, and number one and number last
330 whatever.
Yeah.
233. I want to make it clear we use the UN database of how many countries there are, because apparently it's not established how many fucking countries there are in the world, depending on who you ask, especially on the lower end of the spectrum, which was particularly important to us.
Yeah. So the first and the last on that list swap populations, the second and the second to last swap populations, and so on, just in the entire world. So that's how we did this question.
So I was more on Chris's side of the spectrum, putting a lot of people in a little spot. And what I was specifically looking at was the Caribbean, because one, it's a lot of small countries right next to each other. Mm-hmm. And two, they're pretty isolated. So they'll have to get the Vatican City can lean on the other big countries around it to get resources. The Caribbean can't really do that because they're surrounded by water. So there were a lot of small Caribbean countries. Some of them were less small. So based on how we did the inverse, there was, of the 233 countries, anything in the top 115 most populous countries had their population reduced, and anything below that had their population increase. And anything in the 200 range had a very big population increase. Mm-hmm. So the Caribbean islands that had their population decrease are Nicaragua, Honduras, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba. So we got 5 there. The Caribbean islands / countries that had their populations increase quite dramatically are Montserrat, Anguilla, Caribbean Netherlands, British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, Saint Martin, St. Kitts and Nevis, Cayman Islands, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, United States Virgin Islands, Aruba, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Curacao, St. Lucia, Barbados, Belize, Bahamas, Guadalupe, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and Panama. So those are all the little countries. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them are ranked 200 or above out of 233 countries. So they get replaced with countries like Russia and Japan and Iran and Kenya and Spain, etc. So the former population of the entire Caribbean put together is 64 million people. And the new population is 1.178 billion. So about 20 times more people. There's a lot of people now in the Caribbean. And I figured Chris would figure out how to fit people in these tiny spaces, so I'm just going to lean on that for that answer. And I was looking at how to feed these people. The average person needs about 4 pounds of food per day to be, satisfied. That's the average. Let's assume, as we do, that all food is chicken nuggets.
Of course. Our unit of food.
Yeah, our typical food unit is chicken nuggets.
Yeah. Yep.
You need 4 pounds of chicken nuggets per day. That is our placeholder for all the food. So how many chicken nuggets is this? So
we're going to be expert at chicken nuggets. We're going to know all the properties of chicken nuggets and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So chicken nuggets have a density of 64 pounds per cubic foot. And my question was, if we're bringing these over by a shipping container, how many chicken nuggets can we fit in each shipping container? The shipping containers being 4.5 feet tall, 20 feet long, and 8 feet wide. No, 4.5 feet wide, 8 feet tall, 20 foot long. So in each shipping container, which is 680 cubic feet, we can fit 45,000 pounds of chicken nuggets, which is great.
Okay.
How many chicken nuggets do we need for our 1.2 billion people? We need 4.7 billion pounds of chicken nuggets. Or if you want to go back to volume, 69 million cubic feet of chicken nuggets.
Per day.
That's
a lot.
Which equates to just over 100,000 containers that we need to bring to the islands per day. So the first thing I looked at was, do we have enough boats? The total shipping capacity for all the boats in the world that are on record, which is, I guess if you have a shipping boat, it's on record because they're fucking humongous. Holy shit. The total capacity of all the ships is 20 million containers. So we only need 100,000 per day, so we're looking okay. But you have to remember, the trip takes time. You have to act, because it's not just one ship per day. The ship has to do a whole travel routine. It has to go there, has to get back, has to refill, and come back again. So as far as I can tell, taking a rough global average, I gave it 20 days of travel each way. I threw on an extra 10 for maintenance and loading and all the other shit you gotta do with ships. So 50 days per ship per loop. So that brings our global capacity from 20.3 million to 400,000, which is still enough, but we're now using 25% of our shipping boats to feed 15% of the world's population. So I just did it the Caribbean, and it works the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But if this applies in a lot of places, which I imagine it might, we might run into trouble a little bit down the road. So then the next thing I looked at was whether each island can actually receive enough shipments, if they could actually take 100,000 containers per day of supplies. And so I went to our smallest island, Montserrat, and that one has an area of 39 square miles. And that gives it a rough perimeter of about 25 miles, doing some easy math. So with that and their population of 143 million now, Montserrat would need to receive about 3,141 containers of food each day to keep everyone happy. A medium shipping ship, which is about 700 feet long, can actually carry 1,000 containers.
Oh, really? That's
wow.
Way more than I thought.
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, I guess my answer is fucking working now. So it actually only needs 4 boats a day, which does not run into problems with your 25 miles of coastline. So it's actually not too shabby. You can get your food there if you don't mind that there's a person every 7.5 square feet. And so the next thing I looked at was if you could actually grow the food for all these people, because, we have our farming infrastructure, but we actually are now very suboptimally distributed through the world. For example, while China produces a lot of food right now, all 18 popes and their guards are probably not going to be able to farm very much.
Right.
So I looked at a couple different countries and how much food they grow, and I actually stopped using the US, one, because it's easier to get a little bit of data, and two, the US is actually the most efficient in terms of farming, which I imagine if we have this global, I'm going to call it a crisis, we're going to try to be as efficient as we possibly can. So in the US, 1.5% of the workforce works in agriculture, and the US produces 133 billion pounds of food, which is 133 billion pounds of food, and that's produced by 4.8 million people. So each person can produce about 27,000 pounds of food. And I realize my math might be way off right now, because I just realized I probably should say per year in there, and I'm going by per day on everything else. So
yeah, I've done that before.
What I think was going to happen, I'm going to end my conclusion and then realize that I'm a factor of 365 off. So buckle on, boys. I'm going off the rails. So the first question is how many people are in countries that have quote-unquote farmable conditions? And the way I did this is I assumed that if your population increased by 20 times or more, you no longer have room to farm things. There's I could have picked a few arbitrary points like this, but it actually doesn't matter too much because of how much of the population is in the first 20 most populous countries. So whatever you pick is kind of a rounding error. So this number should actually be fairly accurate. But going by 20 times is my number. It eliminates the 70 most populous countries, because they're all going to be on tiny islands with no room to farm. This leaves only 649 people of our 7 billion that are going to be left to farm. So if they all farmed at 27,200 pounds per person, they would produce 8 billion tons of food. We currently produce 4 billion tons of food. So they could produce double what we produce today. So assuming half the people farm, we could feed the world. But now we divide by 365 and we're absolutely fucking fucked.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, this could work. Oh.
I will say the 4 billion tons of food that we produce each year is a lot more than we theoretically would need to survive. If we have 4 pounds of food times 365 times...
Doing a lot of on-the-fly math today.
Well, it's because I fucked up my math on here, and I'm trying to correct it in real time. 7.5 billion people. That looks like... Divide that by 2,000. 54... 5 million. Okay, so it'd be 5 million tons of food that we would theoretically need if everyone could perfectly eat 4 tons of food a day. 4 pounds of food per day per person. They could perfectly eat that amount, the exact amount they needed, with no waste. We would need to produce 5 million tons of food, which we could do, but from this and the 365 and the amount of food waste we do, which is actually crazy numbers, I got upset looking at those, so I stopped doing that research.
Yeah.
It's like half these crops die, and then 30% loss in transport, and then we throw half of it out, and it's very sad, and I think we're starving. We don't have enough farmers. Conclusion, we're fucked.